Here we go. 2006. I got divorced. My divorce was finalized I think it was December 30th, December 31st, like last minute before the end of the year. Didn't know it yet. Took like a week for it to show up before I actually had the paperwork. So I still thought that I was still married. I was waiting for the update on it. Didn't know yet. I was stood up, and that night I was like, okay, I got to change. I got to change my life. I'm not happy with the direction it's going. I'm not happy with where I'm at. I wanted to do tactical training. I had started doing that, and the guy who owned the company sold it. I got hearing damage, had trouble, couldn't pass a physical anymore. And so basically a lot of all my dreams and plans all came crumbling down. one of my one of my buddies, my old boss, he did ask me a question though. He was like, "Well, like what do you want to do? What do you want to like your goal to be?" And I never really thought about that before. I never really sat down and thought about it. I kind of had a couple steps, one or two steps planned out, but I didn't really have like the end goal even thought about, let alone figured out. And so I go, well, I'd like to teach. Like I love teaching. I love learning things and figuring out a better way to kind of convey that and helping people and sharing information and things I'm passionate about, like helping other people. I was like, that's really what I feel like I'm best at. And so a big part about why I wanted to get into law enforcement was so that way I could have that on my resume so I could teach. And I remember him telling me, he's like, well, if you do this, like you don't need that. Like if you work with me, you don't need that stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. So anyways, that kind of helped some weird limiting belief that I'd created on my own. Like that had helped me kind of start getting over that. And I'd been working at the gun range, left that to go work for that private contracting company. That thing folded. So now I didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I was like, okay, let me think about what path I'm on, where I'm going, and how I got here. And I realized it was I was in a pretty negative place. Childhood, rough life, all that stuff, working at the gun range, doing all the tactical training, martial arts, like that's all what I was focusing on. And I always was like using a filter when I would go out, like a negative filter. My friends, they would always ask me, my last name's Grush. Everyone just called me Grush. And I remember I'd be like at the bar somewhere, we're playing pool once, and my buddies are like, Grush, you all right? And I'm like, yeah, why? They go, man, you look so angry. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. And guys, we don't have like resting bitch face. We have resting asshole face. So my friends are like, oh man, you look like you want to get in a fight. You look like you want to punch someone. I was like, no, I'm having fun. And so I was like, man, all this stuff I'm doing, the filter I'm always in, I'm always kind of like scanning the environment and looking for threats. Not saying that's a bad thing. I didn't know how to tone it down yet or how not to convey such negative energy outward. I didn't know how to keep it in and also not stay in that place yet because I still do that stuff. But the didn't have control, didn't have anything else going on, didn't have really anything positive. So I was like, what's the most opposite, like total different path in life than what I'm doing right now? And so my best friend at the time was moving away and he had a circle of friends, and there were some of the guys I was kind of friends with in the circle. And one of them goes, hey, he's a massage therapist. And he goes, hey, I'm going to start working at this yoga studio. I'm going to rent a room and back. And they told me they're looking for like help. So I was like, oh, that seems like the total different path, like the exact opposite, the yin and yang. So I actually started working at a yoga studio, which is as far out of my comfort zone as you can imagine. It was Central Phoenix, which if you know about that, that's out of my comfort zone. The type of yoga taught was very into like energy and astral projection and all that stuff. So like is far enough out of my comfort zone. So that was a big first step, is like just stepping out of my comfort zone, which by definition, anything outside your comfort zone is going to be uncomfortable. So very uncomfortable. I started going out more. All the times I was invited to hang out with friends, I would say yes. I would go to the places I wasn't comfortable at, bars, clubs, anything like that, pool hall. I just started saying yes to all those things and just trying to get out of the house because I knew being in the house, watching Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, best Star Trek ever, watching that on my DVR, sitting playing video games, sitting at home, like that was killing me. And back in the day, this was a MySpace days. So you could go on your page. If you were logged in, it had like that little online now thing. So I can remember going to like my ex's page and seeing comments and seeing her new guy like messaging and other people commenting, and they're out having fun, and I'm like sitting at home being a loser. So I was like, okay, I can't do that anymore. I can't stop. I got to stop going to her page and looking at it. And there's a good meme of that I've shared before of Yoda. Like if onto your ex's page you go, only pain will experience, something like that. I've shared it before. Maybe I'll put it on the blog with this. And I couldn't really stop myself from doing it. So I started punishing myself because I wanted to punish bad behavior. So I came up with, anytime I would look at her page, I would do 20 push-ups. And I wasn't in shape. I had stopped training. I was eating fast food. I actually picked up a pack of cigarettes and started like smoking a little bit again, which was pathetic. I'd smoked for a few years before. And I was like, all right, I'll do like 20 push-ups. And I did it. I looked. Well, I'll do it, the 20 push-ups, then I can look. So I did it, and then I looked. And then there was nothing there. So normally like 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, you look again to see if something else is there because nothing was there before. And I did 20 more push-ups, and it was harder. And then I looked. And then by like the end of the day, I think I had done like 60, 80 push-ups, and I was dying. Like my arms were sore. The next day I could barely move them because I'd gotten in pretty bad shape. And I was like, oh, I can't look today. I can't do any push-ups. And so very quickly, I think it only took about 2 days, I stopped looking. I'd look at it dozens of times a day. And then as soon as I started punishing myself with something that was actually healthy for me, push-ups, within 2 days, I stopped looking at it. And then I didn't look at it again for like almost a year. I started looking at my diet because as soon as you're putting crap in, like you're going to feel like crap. So I already knew a bit about health. So I was like, okay, I got to stop eating fast food. I got to stop eating French fries. Just cutting out French fries, I lost 5 pounds. Then I started cooking. Then I ended up starting doing like a meal replacement shake. This is when Muscle Milk first came out, which is pretty tasty. So I started drinking that and just cutting back on calories. And very quickly, my old clothes started fitting, and was doing push-ups and sit-ups at home. Running's free. That's another thing for guys who always have excuses about why they can't do anything. Running, push-ups, burpees, all free. So you can do that. And started getting back into better shape. And as soon as you start getting positive, unsolicited feedback, like if one person tells you, hey, you look like you lost some weight, you look good. Well, like 100 people noticed that, but only one person said that. So same thing too. If you ever positive people are more likely to share. If you ever get negative, like, hey, you look pretty angry, then 1,000 people have thought that. If someone ever tells you you smell, 1,000 people have probably thought that, but only one told you. If you're looking good and it's a positive, it's like 100 to 1. So started getting positive feedback. I couldn't really, I didn't know anything about fashion, and I couldn't really afford like high level clothes. So I started just going to the outlet malls. And I would ask the girls working there. That was a great way to break out of my shell, was to small talk with the girls working there and then ask them for help. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to level up my wardrobe. Can you help me? Little secret, look at the mannequins because those are little outfits they put together. But the girls there helped me out. They love playing dress up. A lot of the stuff I didn't buy, but I would try it on. I would try on everything they gave me just to like see how it looked. I went to a hairstylist, and this was a crazy thing. I still joke about it today, where I go there and I just like, I dressed, got some cooler clothes that fit better. That's a huge thing too, getting clothes that fit. And I went to get a haircut, and the girl's like, oh, what do you want me to do? And I was like, this is how I dress. This is the vibe I like. Just make me look cool. And she smiled, and she was like, okay. And I was like, why was that? She was like, I wish more people said that, because they're the experts. They're the one who know like what my face, I have a round face. Like they know what things look good and what they don't. And then I started taking that really far. Like I went to like Tony and Guy and paid way too much money for a haircut. And I think they even like did, I don't know if it was that time or another time, but they even like did some highlights and stuff. And I was just stepping out of my comfort zone, trying everything. If you don't try it, I don't know if I like it or not. And a lot of stuff, as my comfort zone grew, a lot of things that were uncomfortable became no longer uncomfortable. So they became comfortable. But then a lot of things that I thought I wouldn't like, now because I tried it, I knew that I didn't like it. So that was very powerful. It wasn't just oh, I just came up with this thought. I don't like that stuff. I don't like that food. I'm not going to eat it. It's like, well, try it, find out. And then I found out I liked a lot of other things. And still the hardest part was the cold approach, but we'll get to that in a second. So I started losing weight, started exercising, stopped living in the past, stopped online I don't even want to use the term stalking, but looking at your ex's pages and unfollowed all that stuff. People that were even connected to all that, I unfriended them. I didn't want to just be associated with any of that. And I started something different. I just started working in another place and being in a different bubble and seeing where it went and trying new things. So that was huge because if you do the same things you've always been doing, you're going to get the same results. So I needed to do something different. Once I started losing weight, once I started updating my wardrobe, which again, going to the outlet malls wasn't that expensive and hard to do. I mean, I can remember buying jeans at like Ross that were like super expensive jeans. I got them for like 15 bucks and I'd get compliments on them all the time. So if you look, and that's part of the deal too, and that helps you get out of the house. And then when you're there, you can do cold approaches, but I wasn't doing that yet. But all that becomes part of the process. So started doing all that, and like I said, losing weight, getting the positive compliments, going out more. And once that starts happening, you just start leveling up, and everything was becoming better in life. And I still hadn't really figured out the dating stuff, but I was like, okay, well, let me get online and start looking around. And this was before all the stuff is out now, but I remember one thing I specifically looked up, and this is why when I tell students, like, whatever you guys are dealing with, like, I've probably been worse with it. Like, I was always the guy who had a horrible smile in pictures. And so like just one day I was like, I gotta figure out how to smile in pictures. Didn't know how to do it. And it was because I wasn't comfortable. So it was always a forced smile. And when you do a forced smile where it's just the mouth where you go, well, see, I can't even do it bad now, but yeah, it's still a little bit with the face. It was just, if you guys have probably seen it where someone's just smiling with their mouth and not with the rest of their face. And so I Googled how to smile. I found the video. I used to have that video for years. It's no longer up. There's different ones, but it was Tyra Banks talking about from her show how there's X amount of different smiles and you got to smile with your eyes. So if you Google it now, I think it's smile with your eyes. That didn't really make sense to me. But I did watch that video, and she was explaining how there's all these different types of smiles that models have to learn because, again, it's super common sense as soon as I heard it, but I didn't know at the time. I was unconsciously incompetent that like a girl that has like a sexy naughty smile is different than someone who's like laughing. Like that's a simple example. Or a mischievous smile kind of thing. That's a different look. So didn't know that. Didn't even know how to smile in the first place, let alone knew there's different smiles. And so I would practice smiling in the mirror. And I had my old Motorola Sliver. So if you ever had a Razor, that was the folding one. The Sliver was the one piece. That was my phone right before the iPhones came out. And then I got the first one a little bit later. But anyways, I was taking pictures of myself in the mirror trying to practice my smile. Because every picture I had, I hated because I was uncomfortable in it. And I was uncomfortable because I didn't know what to do. So I started pretending to laugh, and just like they did on the show, and starting to almost laugh and that kind of getting the look. And then I got more comfortable with it. I realized later what the issue is. It's because this part of your face and this part of their face aren't in sync. So if half of your face is incongruent with the other part of your face, it looks creepy. And if you look creepy, that's the worst thing. That's the kiss of death for guys. So worst thing a girl can ever say to a guy, you either insult his masculinity, call him a bitch or a pussy or something, or she says he's creepy and the other girls hear it. So right there, your face is creepy. It's incongruent. Something's off. They don't know what it is. Huge red flag. So I started working on that. I was like, I don't want to look so angry. I don't want to look so serious all the time. And that started the process. And I remember I couldn't really flirt or do pickup well unless like all the stars were aligned and maybe I had a drink or two in me. And then I would kind of not care and I would have fun. Now, my ex, when we talked about the stuff a couple years later, I remember she said, she's like, I thought you were out of my league because we went to high school together. She was a little younger and very attractive. And she goes, I thought you were out of my league. I thought she was out of my league. So like, we both thought that. And later when some of my friends found out I got into this stuff, they're like, oh, I didn't know you got into this. Why do you need it? You always were so confident and stuff. So it's really weird how other people's perception of me was like, I never would have needed this stuff. But inside, I definitely needed it. And then later, I would go out with friends. I remember we'd go out to Applebee's. That was one of our cool hangout spots. And I'd flirt with the waitresses. And then I would look cool to my friends. So that kind of helped me go a little bit more because I was the one that had the balls to do it. And then I ended up getting some dates and I ended up having some fun. And then the girl who stood me up reached out to me and apologized and all this stuff. And I gave her another chance. That was dumb. I lowered my standards. I should never have done it. And we ended up going on a date or a couple dates. But anyways, I just started going out on dates again. And you could be picky when you have choices. I didn't have choices, so I was just taking what I could get. I talked about this in the other video about lowering your standards. So I wanted to start raising my standards. And so I started actually reading self-improvement, self-help, self-improvement. I started reading like dating advice. And some of it helped, but not a lot. I remember finding Doc Love on Ask Men. And there was a couple things he wrote that I was like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, but nothing really. And his thing. He was like, oh, you always ask the girl for her home phone number and then write it down in 2 copies so you don't lose one. And I was like, this is like, we have cell phones. Like, we're not really doing that. So I already felt like that stuff was dated. And I was trying to figure out more of this stuff, but just throwing shit against the wall, hoping something stuck. And then one night I was out. And remember, I mentioned before I had a friend and there was a group of friends. Well, one of the guys in the group was a 25-year-old virgin. I don't even know if he'd ever kissed a girl. And later I saw him go on a cold approach to flight attendants and then have a very positive interaction. And that's what started my journey of the game, which I'll tell that story in the next video. But to summarize, beginning of the year, I was like, all right, I'm going to make this year different. Got to get healthy. Got to stop living in the past. Later, that evolved into not what ifing negative future possibilities, which is living in the future. I got to live in the present, make the most of it. But started losing weight, started eating healthy, started upgrading my wardrobe, stopped living in the past, started taking action, started getting out of the house, and the meal replacement shakes. The weight came off pretty quickly because I was eating such a horrible diet. And all the things that so many guys do this when they get in a relationship, they stop doing things that they like because now I got a girl, I don't need to do that anymore. Oh, now I got a girl, I don't have to exercise. I was doing martial arts, I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Oh, I got a girl, I don't need to train anymore. Horrible logic. Like, you need to keep doing it because you need to be the guy that you were that she fell for. And you need to keep leveling up and getting better. So you keep getting better. So she's not settling either. So like, you guys both need to be doing that and getting better. You joke in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, oh, what happened? Where'd so-and-so go? Oh, he got a girlfriend. Well, the girlfriend doesn't tell the guy to stop training. The guy just stops training because he's like, I'd rather spend time with her. But such an AFC mindset. So I was like, all right, I got to get back into jiu-jitsu. So I started training again. I got my gi out. I don't think that one fit. So I had to get a different one. But very quickly, the old one fit again. And I was wearing that and started training. Working at the yoga studio, getting out of the house, limiting how much TV and video games. I think it was PlayStation 2 days. Yeah, because I got a PS3 with my old wingman when we became roommates. And just being social, small talking. That was it. That's all. I didn't have a game plan yet. I didn't know what to say. I didn't have any openers, but just talking to people. Just all the opposites of what I was doing. It's almost like that episode of Seinfeld where George is like, well, if everything I've been doing is like screwing me up, I got to do the opposite because that's the right decision. And then he orders the opposite sandwich in a restaurant and then goes up to the girl. He's like, I'm 40 years old. I live with my parents. I'm unemployed. And the girl like pushes out the chair for him to sit in. So I kind of thought that. I was like, let me try the opposite. All those times I would hear that negative voice say not to do something. Now, I'm not talking about the negative voice telling you like not to jump off the bridge or not to throw the knife in the air and pick, like the one that's keeping you alive and safe. Like, yeah, that like the real stuff, listen to it. But the negative voice that was always in my head telling me, oh, don't talk to that girl. She probably has a boyfriend. Oh, don't go work there. It's probably going to suck. Like all that just what if negative stuff. I just stopped listening to it because I was like, that voice has been dooming me for so long. And slowly I started coming out of my funk and I started having fun. I started working a different place. That became a fun experience. Crazy, crazy experience. It was part of First Fridays, which is something I never ever went to before. But then we were like on it. So then every first Friday of the month kind of was like a little party and stuff. So I just met tons of people. I remember I was always into magic as a kid. And I remember I did a magic trick in sixth grade. I made a dollar bill float for like performance day. I loved it. The teacher loved it. The other kids loved it. But this one guy who was a dick made fun of me later. And I remember being like so ashamed of that I stopped doing magic. And so I started getting back into it because that's just something I love doing and playing around with. And I got a bin of stuff over there somewhere that's all these magic tricks still. Which now being a dad, I can already feel it starting to come back out. And just kind of I started questioning like everything that I had. Like, why did I stop doing magic? Why did I stop going out? Like all these things, why? And if I didn't have a good reason, or why do I believe it needs to be this way? Oh, that's what I learned from TV. Like I was questioning every belief I had. I was like, why do I believe that's the case? That's the way. And I either needed to like verify it another way or like from my own experience. It's just something I never did before was like playing the field. I always was like relationship, and they always were serious. I grew up very religious. I was an altar boy and stuff. And so I was going to marry my high school sweetheart, and then that didn't work. She broke my heart. So that also kind of set me up for all the other stuff later. She later, I don't know if she cheated on me after she was older, or she just broke up with me and then like a day later she's with another guy. But anyways, that had happened before. So I realized I was like, why am I so attached to all this? Why do I fall so fast for all of them? Let me play it slow. So I started dating a little bit, having some fun. Um, but again, I didn't know anything about pickup yet. So I would hit on a lot of waitresses because it was like a warm approach. And then I messed up on that because I started hanging out with a couple waitresses at the same place and they didn't know at Applebee's. And they didn't know. So I kind of ruined it for all my friends. So we couldn't go there because I went there to see one and the other one was working and I had to like sneak out. And then they knew that like I was. So anyways, that was like after that, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna be sneaky or anything after because the one time I tried it, it blew up in our face. And so that was the beginning of how I started rebuilding myself. And it all came down to maybe the biggest summary point is it's all me. It was everything was in my control. It was all my decisions. It was everything I decided to do. So extreme ownership over it. And just deciding like this is the end. I've got to fix this. If I don't fix this area of my life now, I don't know if I'll have a life later that can be fixed or is possible to be fixed. However you want to take that statement. But when you start getting depressed and you don't feel like there's any hope, you start thinking bad shit. So I didn't want to go any further down that path. So I was like, all right, I got to start making my life a life that I'm happy with. And no one's gonna else is gonna do that except for you. I just heard a song. I think it's a Franz Ferdinand song about waiting my whole life. That's a couple years old, but I was waiting my whole damn life for someone like you. Like I even heard that and I was like, wow, what an AFC song. Like you're waiting for someone else to come around and save you. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to save yourself. And also, you can't save someone else. Like you need to save yourself. They need to save themselves. You both need to figure your life out. And then when you guys get together, a rising tide raises all ships and you guys both help each other out. So just before the Zoom, I was having like a great heart to heart conversation with my wife and we're leveling each other up and it's awesome. So that's the other thing is with all this stuff, this is where I ended up and now I have a family and it's pretty awesome. So that's how I started started over after my divorce. That's the beginning of the phoenix being reborn from the ashes, which obviously the phoenix being burned up, like that's going to hurt. It has to. And all those cliche lines we've heard, it's always darkest before the dawn. If you want the rainbows, you got to put up with the rain. Like there's a reason for all that. Every ending's a new beginning. Like one door closes, another opens. Like it's all true. All those cliche lines are true. You just got to not let life happen. You have to be the one steering the ship. Because if you're not steering the ship, someone else or something else is. And then that's never going to be a good thing. So that was how I started. I think that's what I wrote. How I started over after my divorce. That's how I started. That's what set me up for the next part, which is going to be what happened when I first heard about pickup in the game, which I would be the guy shitting on this stuff more than anyone else in the world if I had just watched the show or if I had just heard about it, if I hadn't seen it first. And so that blew me away. Tony Robbins quote I fell in love with years ago: true change comes from inspiration or desperation. Well, I was desperate and then I saw it happen and I was inspired, put it together. That's why I got so good so fast, took this so serious, is because of that. And so this was the beginning, and this is what like kind of preloaded me and prepared me for the next chapter, which was a couple months later. I'll try to look and see the dates of it because I might have that stuff still, like because we started emailing about it right after. So I might have it up. It was a couple months, 4 months into the year, I think. So this was all a process. And I was just telling this on a coaching call the other day, like, and then this came up on one of these live streams too. Like, if you're running a mile's a mile, 100 pounds is 100 pounds, 200 pounds is 200 pounds. That never changes, but you get in better shape and the weight feels lighter. You get in better shape and the distance gets ran in a faster time and you can go further. So it never gets easier. You get better. So I was starting to get better. I was starting to have hope. I was starting to be excited about the future. And then I was like, okay, this is still the area of my life I've got to figure out. So I was kind of doing a lot of it was like inner game work before the pickup stuff. And so that's why that's such a big part of this. And what I recommend, guys, you can start doing, oh, I'm going to start approaching girls. Okay, we'll get all this stuff lined up first. You can be approaching during it like I was. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more effective if you level up some stuff beforehand. But yes, you can definitely start approaching right at the beginning, and then all of it levels up instead of leveling this up and then starting from here and then trying to play catch up. But that's why there's inner game and outer game, and inner game is so important. Some coaches I've heard say inner game is the most important. I get what they're saying. I don't think it is. I think both are important. Just like a tree, it needs to have strong roots, foundation, and so it can pull up water, nutrients, and everything. And it needs to have strong branches and leaves, because if it doesn't get sunlight and carbon dioxide. So it needs both. So we need both, inner and outer. And so top and bottom, inside, outside. So once that started coming up, started leveling up, then I was ready for the game, which I don't think's really a great book on pickup. It doesn't really teach you much, but it gave me hope, and then it started making things click. And so that's where the next video will be. So I hope everyone had a good New Year's. We definitely did, except for now I feel like an old man because one of our dogs is scared of fireworks, and also we're worried about the baby waking up. So it's funny how life changes. But New Year's is great. Beginning of the year is already kicking off and being awesome. And I got some awesome stuff, one-on-ones booked, and new students signing up, and I got martial arts training, all this stuff coming up. So like for guys who need help, we got the Discord. You can post and ask questions whenever you want. I'm available, but like this is the way, this is the path, and it's all connected. And leveling up as a man, which part of that's being able to protect yourself and your loved ones. That's all connected. So highly recommend everyone does that. This is the blueprint, and then it's very easy to tweak it and modify it as needed. And if you guys need any help, reach out. And I will plan on next week. Let me look at my calendar. I will plan on next week doing another live stream. That'll be when I first heard of the game, that story, and when we first started going out. And that's our first story of trying pick up, like my first time going out with my wing and I. Whew, horrible, hilarious, horrible crash and burn story. So I'll tell you guys about that. And yeah, I'll do another live stream or two. And then I got some stuff coming up at the end of the month. And then I think a one-on-one right after. So there might be a little gap on Fridays where we're not doing this, but maybe I'll do it another day if you guys want. Otherwise, I'll do a little break and then pick back up. And I'll get back to answering questions. But beginning of the year, this is what happened. My end of the year, hitting rock bottom. Beginning of the year, what I started doing. If anyone else is going through a similar experience, or any of you guys are down in the dumps, I kind of wanted to share this with you. And it's not super hard. It wasn't doing some push-ups, doing some sit-ups, eating less fast food. I didn't get to the point where I was eating steamed broccoli and chicken and shit. Like Just not eating fast food, not eating tons of it. Don't eat 3 servings worth. Oh man, that's another thing. I would go to a restaurant and eat so much food. So eat a normal portion. Don't eat shit. Eat less shit. Like it wasn't super hard to make some big, powerful changes and start the ball rolling. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Hope you guys are gonna make the most out of this year. And like I said, if you guys need anything, reach out. Talk to you next week.